Millionaire judge opens the door and sees the black cleaning lady hugging his daughter. He freezes when he discovers the reason. Judge William Thompson stopped in the doorway of her daughter's room, his blood running cold. There stood Grace, the 45-year-old cleaning lady, holding 8-year-old Isabella to her chest, rocking the girl who was sobbing uncontrollably. "Sure, my little one, it's okay now," whispered Grace, stroking the child's blonde hair. "Aunt Grace is here. No one will hurt you anymore." William felt the world spin. His daughter was trembling, her face red from crying, and on the back of her childish shirt were small marks that he recognized immediately. Marks that should not exist on the body of an 8-year-old. "Grace, what's going on here?" he asked, his voice coming out in a whisper. The black woman looked up at him, and William saw something that haunted him. It wasn't fear or guilt, but a devastating mixture of compassion and disappointment. As if she knew something terrible that he should have realized long ago. "Mr. William," she said softly, without letting go of Isabella, "we need to talk." Grace Williams had been working at that mansion in Connecticut for 6 years. A widow and mother of 2 grown children, she knew every corner of that $3 million house better than his owner. William was a respected man, a federal judge known for his harsh sentences against family crimes. Ironically, he specialized in child abuse cases. Over the past 3 months, Grace had noticed changes in Isabella. The girl, once cheerful and talkative, had become quiet and withdrawn. She slept poorly, had constant nightmares, and whenever Victoria, her 28-year-old stepmother, approached, the child would subtly shrink away. Grace never said anything. Who would believe a black cleaning lady accusing the wife of a federal judge? Victoria was a pediatrician, blonde, elegant, from a traditional family. Grace was a simple woman from the Bronx, without a college education. She knew exactly how this conversation would end. But today, when she arrived at work and heard Isabella's desperate cries coming from the bedroom, followed by the unmistakable sound of a slap, Grace could no longer remain silent. Victoria had left for an emergency at the hospital, as she always did after her moments of stress with her stepdaughter. "Daddy doesn't believe her," Isabella sobbed in Grace's arms. "He thinks she makes things up. He said Victoria loves her and that she should be grateful to have such a loving mother." Grace's heart broke. She knew that pattern. The manipulation, the isolation, the way the abuser convinces other adults that the child is problematic or a liar. She had seen it before, in her own family years ago. "Isabella, my angel, you're not making anything up," Grace whispered, drying the girl's tears. "And starting today, things are going to be different." That was when William came home early, hoping to surprise his family with tickets to a Broadway show. Instead, he found a scene that shattered all his certainties. "Mr. William," Grace repeated, rising slowly, Isabella still clinging to his waist. "I should have spoken to you a long time ago. But I'm afraid you won't believe me." William looked at his daughter, then at Grace, and something cold and terrible began to form in his stomach. Isabella's words echoed in his mind. All the time she had complained about Victoria, all the times he had defended his wife, saying that Isabella was adjusting to the new marriage. "Tell him, Isabella," Grace encouraged softly. "Tell his father what happens when he's not home. If this story of injustice disguised as a perfect family has touched his heart, don't miss the next chapters and subscribe to the channel. Because what Grace was about to reveal was not just about a child suffering in silence. It was about an entire system built to protect those in power and silence those who dare to speak the truth. Isabella clung even tighter to Grace, as if the woman were her only anchor in a world that was falling apart. William felt something cold run down his spine when he saw his daughter's reaction. She wasn't running to him, her father. She was hiding behind the cleaning lady. "Isabella, come here," William said, extending his arms. But the girl shook her head violently, burying her face in Grace's shoulder. "She doesn't want to talk in front of strangers, Daddy," Isabella murmured, her words muffled against Grace's simple blouse. "Victoria said that if I told lies about her, you would send me away just like you did with Mommy." William's world stopped. His first wife, Jennifer, had died of cancer when Isabella was only 4. Victoria had come into his life 2 years later, like a salvation, beautiful, caring, a pediatrician specializing in childhood trauma. She had cured Isabella of her grief, or so William believed. Grace felt anger boiling in her veins. During 6 years working in that house, she had watched Victoria methodically build a psychological prison around an 8-year-old child. And worst of all, William, a man who condemned abusers professionally, was completely blind to the monster sleeping beside him. "Mr. William," Grace began, her voice firm but respectful, "Isabella isn't making anything up. I've been noticing changes in her for 3 months. She doesn't sleep well, she's afraid to be alone with Victoria, and whenever you come home, the girl is tense, like a bird ready to fly." William shook his head. "Grace, Victoria is a doctor. She works with traumatized children every day. If there were a problem, he would be the first to notice." Grace knew that pattern because she had lived it. 25 years ago, her own sister Denise had been married to a respected man, a pastor at the local church. Everyone loved him, including Grace. Until the day she found her 6-year-old niece locked in the bathroom, crying, with scratch marks on her arm. Denise was also problematic, according to her husband. Difficult, dramatic, made things up to get attention. Grace had believed him at the time. She had been one of the people who convinced Denise to give the marriage a chance, to think of the children. 3 months later, Denise was dead, officially a domestic accident. Grace would never again remain silent while watching a child suffer. "Isabella," Grace said softly, "can you tell your father about that time Victoria said her mother didn't like you?" William's eyes widened. "What?" Isabella lifted her face, swollen from crying. "Victoria said that Mommy got sick because I was a bad girl. That if I had been a better daughter, she would have fought harder to stay alive." William's breath caught. He remembered the nights when Isabella would wake up crying, saying she had nightmares about her mother. Victoria always came up with some medicine to calm her down, saying it was normal, part of the grieving process. He had trusted his wife's medical expertise. "And there's more, Daddy," Isabella continued, her voice small but determined. "Victoria hits me when you're not around. She doesn't hit me hard, but she pinches me here," she showed the inside of her arm, where it doesn't show. "And then she hugs me and apologizes, saying it's because she loves me so much and wants me to be perfect." Grace felt bile rise in her throat. The classic cycle of abuse, violence followed by manipulative affection. Her was a pro at it. "She also messes with my food," Isabella continued. "She puts something in it that gives me a stomachache, so she can take care of me in front of others and show how loving a mother she is." William sank heavily into the armchair in Isabella's room. Every word his daughter spoke was a stab in his conscience. How many times had Victoria saved Isabella from mysterious ailments? How many times had he praised his wife's dedication? "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I tried, Daddy. But Victoria was always there, and she would make that concerned face and say I was processing my grief in an unhealthy way. You always believed her because she's a doctor." Grace watched the man she respected crumble before her. William Thompson, the judge who had convicted dozens of abusers, discovering that he had harbored a predator in his own home. "And there's something worse, Daddy," Isabella whispered. "Victoria said that if I told you, she would say that Aunt Grace was teaching me to lie. She said that he would send Grace away and put me in boarding school." William's blood ran cold. Victoria had weaponized his relationship with Grace, using Isabella's fear of losing the only true mother figure she had ever known. Grace crouched down to Isabella's height. "My little one, you were very brave to tell me all this. And now you don't have to be afraid anymore, because I won't let anything happen to you. Promise, Aunt Grace." "I promise." William looked at the two of them, the simple black woman holding her daughter with more love and protection than his sophisticated doctor wife had ever shown. The irony was devastating and humiliating. At that moment, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Victoria's melodious voice floated down the stairs. "Honey, I'm home." "What are you doing home so early?" Grace and William exchanged a look full of understanding. Isabella began to tremble. "Isabella, go to the bathroom and lock the door," Grace whispered. "Don't come out until I call you, okay?" The girl nodded and ran. Grace turned to William, who looked lost. "Mr. William, now you're going to find out what this woman is capable of when she feels threatened. And I promise you one thing, after today, she will never touch a hair on her daughter's head again." Victoria's footsteps slowly climbed the stairs, each one sounding like a threat. Grace clenched her fists. For 25 years, she had carried the guilt of not protecting her niece. Today, that story would have a different ending. What no one knew was that Grace wasn't just prepared to confront Victoria. She had been documenting everything for weeks, waiting for the right moment. And now, with William finally seeing the truth, it was time to show the manipulative doctor that she had completely underestimated the strength of a woman who had nothing left to lose. "Honey? Why are you all up here?" Victoria asked, appearing at the bedroom door with his usual perfect smile. His blue eyes quickly scanned the scene, William tense, Grace still standing guard, and Isabella clearly hiding in the bathroom. "Where's my princess?" she continued, her melodious voice perfectly masking any real concern. "I hope she's not misbehaving again." Grace felt something cold run through her veins as she heard those words. Misbehaving again. As if an 8-year-old could be blamed for suffering abuse. "Victoria," William began, his voice strangely formal, "we need to talk about Isabella. About certain things she told me." Victoria's smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "Oh dear, you know how dramatic children can be. Isabella has a very vivid imagination, especially when she wants attention." She walked to the center of the room, completely ignoring Grace. "Where is she? I'll explain the situation to you." "The situation?" Grace repeated, her voice low but laden with an authority that surprised Victoria. "And what situation would that be, Doctor?" Victoria turned slowly to Grace, and for the first time, his gaze lost all maternal falsehood. There was the predator Grace had seen emerge in recent months. Cold, calculating, dangerous. "I'm sorry, but I don't recall asking for her opinion on family matters," Victoria said, each word distilled with contempt. "Perhaps you'd better return to your duties." William watched the interaction with growing horror. Her mask was slipping before his eyes, revealing something that made him question how he had been so blind for so long. "My duties," Grace repeated slowly, "include protecting the children in this house. And that is exactly what I am doing." "Protect?" Victoria laughed, a crystal clear, cruel sound. "From whom? From me? From the mother who takes care of her when she's sick, who takes her to the doctor, who makes her sick so she can take care of her," Grace interrupted. "Who pinches a child where no one can see. Who whispers poison in her ear about her dead mother." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked from Grace to William, quickly assessing the situation. Her years of manipulation kicked into full gear. "William, darling, are you seeing this?" she said, her voice taking on the tone of a wounded victim. "His maid is literally making up stories about me. This is sick. Maybe she has mental problems." Grace had expected exactly that reaction. For 25 years, since her niece's death, she had studied this pattern. She had read books on psychological abuse, she had talked to other women, she had prepared herself for the day when she would once again find herself facing a monster disguised as a savior. "Mental problems," Grace repeated, nodding slowly. "That's what you told Dr. Martinez about her, isn't it? That she had trouble processing grief." Victoria froze. Dr. Martinez was the child psychiatrist she had consulted 3 months ago, in a private session that William didn't even know had happened. "How did you?" Victoria began, then quickly composed herself. Have you been going through his private papers? That's a violation. No, Grace said calmly. I've been paying attention. Something I should have done a long time ago. William looked from one to the other, feeling he was missing something crucial. Grace, what are you talking about? Grace took a deep breath. It was time to reveal what she had discovered in the last 2 months of quiet investigation. Mr. William, her wife has consulted 3 different doctors in the last 6 months. To each, she gave a different version of Isabella's problems. That's ridiculous, Victoria exploded, but her voice was getting higher, less controlled. To Dr. Martinez, Isabella had behavioral disorders, Grace continued relentlessly. To Dr. Chun, it was traumatic regressions that she was having. To Dr. Patel, it was episodes of severe anxiety that required medication. William felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. Medication? What medication? Grace reached into her pocket and pulled out a small clear bottle. This medication. I found 5 identical bottles hidden around the house. All prescribed to Isabella Thompson by different doctors, with dosages that no ethical professional would give to an 8-year-old. Victoria tried to grab the bottle, but Grace quickly pulled it away. This is a high-potency anti-anxiety drug. 1 drop in a child's juice can cause drowsiness, confusion, even fainting. You have no right to search my house. Victoria shouted, completely losing her composure. William, are you going to let this woman accuse me of these things? William looked at the bottle in Grace's hand, then at his wife's distraught face. Victoria, is this true? Of course not. I'm a doctor. Why would I do that to my own? She stopped abruptly, realizing she had almost said her own daughter. Isabella had never been her daughter. She was just an obstacle to the perfect life she wanted to build. Grace caught the hesitation immediately. Because Isabella was never his daughter, was she, Doctor? She's just an inconvenient hindrance to the perfect marriage you planned. Shut up. Victoria exploded, her mask finally slipping. You don't know anything. Nothing about me, about this family, about... I know everything, Grace interrupted, her voice now charged with the strength of months of careful planning. I know about the fake doctor's appointments. I know about the medications. I know about the photos he posts on social media every time Isabella gets sick, pretending to be the devoted mother. Victoria paled. How did he? And I know about Isabella's life insurance that you had William increase last month. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of William's heavy breathing. He looked at Victoria as if he were seeing a stranger. Life insurance, he whispered. Victoria, why did you ask to increase the life insurance on an 8-year-old? Victoria opened and closed her mouth several times, like a fish out of water. Grace watched with cold satisfaction. For 2 months, she had documented every suspicious movement, every inconsistency, every little lie that added up to a monstrous truth. That's very convenient, Victoria finally said, trying to regain control. Very convenient that a cleaning lady suddenly becomes an expert detective in medicine and child psychology. Grace smiled for the first time since the conversation had begun. It was a smile that made Victoria take a step back. You know, Doctor, for all these months you completely underestimated his abilities. You thought that because I'm a black woman without a college degree, working as a cleaning lady, I would be easy to manipulate or intimidate. And unlike my niece Denise, this time I came prepared. Photos of the marks on Isabella. Recordings of your phone conversations with the doctors. Did you know that the house phone picks up his cell phone signal? Copies of the contradictory medical prescriptions. And my favorite, Grace opened the folder and took out a smartphone, video recordings of you drugging Isabella. Victoria's world collapsed in a matter of seconds. William looked at Grace with a mixture of admiration and horror, realizing that the woman he had seen as a simple maid was, in fact, a formidable strategist who had woven an inescapable web around his wife. "How did you manage to film?" Victoria stammered. "Small cameras are cheap these days," Grace replied calmly. "And an invisible woman like me can put them anywhere without anyone noticing." Victoria looked around the room frantically, as if she could identify where the cameras were. Her calculating mind worked quickly, searching for a way out, a way to turn the situation around. "No one will believe you," she said finally, but her voice lacked its previous conviction. "I'm a doctor. I have a reputation. You are." "I'm the woman who has enough evidence to end his career and put him in jail," Grace cut her off. "And you know what else? I'm not just a cleaning lady, doctor. I'm a very, very smart cleaning lady who has spent the last 2 months building a case that any prosecutor would love to prosecute." William finally found his voice. "Grace, why didn't you tell me before?" Grace looked at him with a gentle but firm expression. "Because you wouldn't have believed me, Mr. William. Not against her. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed you to see with your own eyes who she really is." At that moment, a low moan came from the bathroom. Isabella was listening to everything, and Grace knew that the girl would finally understand that she was not alone, that someone had fought for her when even her own father could not see the truth. Victoria looked at the bathroom door, then at William, and Grace could see the exact moment when she realized she had lost completely. But Grace also knew that people like Victoria didn't give up easily. They fought, lied, and manipulated until the very end. And Grace was prepared for that too. What Victoria didn't know yet was that Grace hadn't been working alone for the past 2 months. There was a network of people Victoria had belittled and ignored, who now possessed pieces of a devastating puzzle. And in a few hours, when all the pieces came together, Dr. Victoria's perfect, carefully constructed life would be completely destroyed in a way she could never have imagined. Victoria looked frantically around the room, her calculating mind working in overdrive to find a way out. "You have nothing," she said, but her voice was losing the medical authority that always protected her. "These recordings were made without my consent. They're worthless in court." Grace smiled with devastating calm. "You know, doctor, you're right about one thing. Secret recordings can indeed be problematic legally." Victoria felt a spark of hope, but Grace continued. "It's fortunate that I haven't been working alone these past 2 months." Grace took out his cell phone and dialed a number. "Dr. Martinez? This is Grace Williams from the Thompson residence." "Yes, the woman who called yesterday. Can you come up now, please?" Victoria froze. "What? Dr. Martinez is here." "Along with Dr. Chin and Dr. Patel. The 3 doctors you misled with false diagnoses about Isabella." Grace put her phone away. "They're very eager to see the recordings where you admit to lying to him." The sound of footsteps on the stairs echoed through the house. Victoria looked at William, then at the bathroom door where Isabella was still hiding, and back at her. Her mask of competent doctor finally crumbled completely. "William, please," she began, her voice high-pitched with desperation. "You can't believe this woman over me. I'm her wife." "You were," he replied coldly. "You were his wife when he believed you loved my daughter." 3 doctors entered the room, followed by 2 uniformed police officers. Victoria paled as she recognized the faces of the professionals she had manipulated for months. "Dr. Victoria Thompson," asked one of the officers, "you are under arrest on suspicion of child abuse, medical fraud, and prescription forgery." "This is ridiculous," Victoria shouted. "I'm a pediatrician. I've worked at St. George's Children's Hospital for 5 years." Dr. Martinez approached, his face grave. "You worked there, doctor. After reviewing the evidence Mrs. Williams presented to us, the medical board suspended her license this morning. The false prescriptions you wrote on behalf of our clinic constitute a federal crime." Victoria looked around like a cornered animal. Her medical career, her reputation, her millionaire marriage, all disappearing in a matter of minutes. "Isabella!" she suddenly shouted. "Isabella, Come here. Tell them how much I love you. Tell them how I've always taken care of you." The bathroom door slowly opened. Isabella came out, but she didn't run to Victoria as she usually did. Instead, she walked straight to Grace and clung to her waist. "I don't want to pretend I like her anymore," Isabella said, her voice small but firm. "She hurts me, Daddy. And Aunt Grace never let that happen when she was around." Victoria tried one last desperate move. "You don't understand. I was just trying to prepare Isabella for real life. The world is cruel to spoiled children. I was teaching her strength." "Strength," Grace repeated, her voice laden with a moral authority that made even the police officers sit up and take notice. "You were poisoning an 8-year-old child to look like a devoted mother on social media. You were collecting money from followers who felt sorry for his struggle as the mother of a sick child." Dr. Patel examined the screen, shaking his head in disgust. "You raised nearly $50,000 by exploiting this child. And what's worse," Grace continued, "is that has increased Isabella's life insurance to $2 million last month. A healthy 8-year-old child doesn't need $2 million in insurance unless someone is planning something." Victoria collapsed. Literally. She fell to her knees on the floor of the pink bedroom, all her elegance and composure evaporating. "You don't understand the pressure I was under," she sobbed. "The debts, the creditors, I needed." "You needed to get money," one of the officers finished, putting the handcuffs on her. "And you decided to use an innocent child as his business plan." As they led Victoria away, she screamed one last time, "William, you'll regret this. Without me, you're just a mediocre judge with a traumatized daughter." William looked at Isabella, who was still hugging Grace, and then at the woman who had been his confidant and savior. "Grace, how can I thank you?" "By protecting this girl from now on," Grace replied simply. "And maybe by believing when people like me try to warn you about the obvious." But the real transformation was just beginning. What William didn't know yet was that Grace had much bigger plans than just saving Isabella, plans that would change not only his life, but the fate of dozens of other children who suffered in silence, waiting for someone brave enough to finally find her voice. 6 months later, Grace Williams was no longer just a cleaning lady. William had officially appointed her as Isabella's legal guardian and director of the new Thompson Child Protection Foundation, created with the $2 million from the life insurance policy that Victoria had fraudulently increased. And Grace, look. Isabella ran across the mansion's garden, holding a drawing. "It's you saving all the children in the world." Grace smiled, watching the radiant, healthy girl playing freely. Isabella had blossomed completely since Victoria had left her life. "How is our little heroine?" William asked, approaching with coffee for both of them. The judge's transformation had also been complete. The arrogant man who had initially doubted Grace now treated her like family, recognizing that a simple woman from the Bronx had saved his daughter when his legal expertise had completely failed. Victoria was serving 15 years in prison for child abuse and medical fraud. Her medical license had been permanently revoked, her assets confiscated to compensate the victims, and her reputation destroyed nationally after the case went viral on social media. "Dr. Martinez called today," Grace reported. 3 more children were saved using our medical abuse detection protocol. William nodded, proud. The foundation had already trained 500 professionals in hospitals across 10 states, using Grace's expertise to identify patterns that doctors missed. "You know what I've learned, Grace? True wisdom doesn't come from degrees, but from the courage to protect the defenseless." Grace hugged Isabella, watching the sunset. "And I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply giving children the love and security they deserve." Justice had triumphed not through violence or cruelty, but through the unwavering determination of a woman who refused to remain silent. If this story of courage and protection touched his heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that show how ordinary people can make extraordinary differences when they choose to fight for the truth.